Good. Bob, the sustainability and transformation plans.
Thank you very much, Chairman. So, taking your theme, I hope the paper is clear as to where we are on both ambition and process, and I'd probably draw your particular attention to the next steps piece that runs from para 17. I'd add to it that the fact that this hasn't been a process that's been running without our engagement at particular touchstone points. So a rolling combination of Jim, myself, Steve, and at times Kathy have been operating with other ALB leaders and the Local Government Association with our regional leads to see where particular STPs are at particular points of their development. And that's aside from regular, not frequent, but regular engagement between NHSI and NHSE leadership to have a conversation about how we think things are going, how we can shape and direct and give advice to the STP process. So unless Jim has anything else to add in relation to that, Chairman, I'm inclined to stop there and just let the conversation and the discussion run, and I'll deal with whatever I can, and I'm sure Jim, Stephen and other executive colleagues chip in.
Thank you. Questions, Richard?
I thought the paper was very good on the process, Bob, but I guess what I was trying to get a better understanding of is where we are in this process compared to where we need to be. Mm-hmm. And if there's a gap there, what we're really trying to do to bridge that. So it may be that everything's running to time, we're getting the right answers from it, but I suspect not. So a bit of a flavour of that.
Okay, so inevitably we have regions and footprints that have embraced this and are well on the task of trying to both identify their solutions for clinical, financial and safety sustainability, and we've got some parts of the country that have found that more challenging. But the thing you'd have to say about them all is that they've all responded to the ask. So the issue is more about how well down the development path they are rather than have they engaged or not. I'd probably chunk them into three categories, Richard. So we've got ones that actually all through the process there's been a level of confidence in both end state and capability to deliver that end state. We've got another cohort where there is a combination of they know what they want to do, but they need help in both either from a confidence perspective or from a sort of a capability perspective to be able to articulate that properly. And then inevitably there are a handful that, irrespective of their enthusiasm and commitment to it, are finding it still just a little bit difficult to articulate what an end state is, and then our knowledge of the patch would recognise the difficulty in implementing that. We've just received, I think the paper indicates, we've just received what we'd call effectively the comprehensive resource impact of STPs. We've been through an initial analysis of that. It's reinforcing our touchstone points that we've been through the year as the ones where we're more or less confident in. We've gone back out to deal with some technical noise issues, and over the next week or so we'll be having both targeted conversations with our colleagues in NHS England and probably with specific STPs to try and help them get to a place where by the end of October we've got a better, according to the timetable, we've got a better handle on what the piece is. And when we get onto the next item, of course, we'll be talking about the operational planning piece, and there's an inevitable dovetail in there and a nuancing about how you may move from a medium-term planning process into a relatively shorter-term planning process.
So just to add to that, I've just left the group of chief execs this morning, Richard, talking about this. And the way I see the STP process, it's been a hugely successful OD process so far and strategic planning process. And it's a bit odd that we would claim a success that people have spoken to each other for the first time in a few years, but it's actually true. Yeah. But is it a process yet where we can kick the tyres on really strong plans and be confident across 44? Absolutely not. So I think the next few weeks is about how we get enough into good shape, where we're confident we can actually execute a very good plan locally with our support, and which need more work, more time, further development over future months, and we're at a crunchy kind of crossroads with it now.
And do we feel that with NHS we've got the resource to get to that point?
So honestly, we couldn't do it all for everybody over 44, and I don't think that was ever possible. So I think as Bob alluded to, it's about the segmentation, the prioritisation now, and we're having a debate about how many can we realistically really focus on to go quite quickly, and make sure when tested the plans are absolutely watertight. Because if we do secure extra capital, which is a possible outcome for some of these things, we'll have to be able to wash their face long term, and we all need to be really certain that can be delivered because we've all seen in the past people promising the earth on a capital investment and then it all goes horribly wrong later on.
And how do we actually work with the most challenged SDPs? Because it strikes me it's quite a difficult balance we've got to strike, isn't it? Because the plans have got to be owned by them, and it's got to be a sort of bottom-up process. On the other hand, they're challenged and they've got difficulties, and we know that we've got to encourage them to do the best.
Bob, you want to?
No, sorry, Rick, I thought you were going to.
I think it's building on that point before you answer, I guess, Bob, is that we've got across the country a mixed picture about how clinicians are really engaged with this or not. And in some parts we've got clinicians driving these new models of care, and in others they are not as driving force as they should be. So I think we've got some work to do to really make sure that doctors, nurses and healthcare professionals across England are really engaged in this consistently to add that value. But some of them are really motoring. The clinicians are driving this and leading this personally.
Yes, I think that's a very valid point that Ruth makes, Chairman. Indirect response, Caroline, I think it plays into, as Jim said, how over the coming days, we talk about weeks, but actually some of this stuff is days.
Timetable.
Is how much through our prioritisation and confidence process with NHS we can determine how much of that support to help SDPs is and should be appropriately done at the regional level by NHS and NHSI combined. And actually, in the same way that Jim's spoken about the fact that some parts of the country may have spoken together for the first time, actually, from an arm's length body perspective, this has been quite a good process to ensure greater alignment and focus between national players. So there's a piece for Jim, Stephen and I to be determining with NHSE about where we leave this to joint regional teams, because that's where the local knowledge and expertise is, and where occasionally might we need to take a sort of a national support process involving other players into specific parts of the country where we either have knowledge and history because of our past, or because actually we need to bring maybe a little more focused conversation into what the end state is.
Sarah.
Can I just ask to follow up on that? A lot of the SDPs are going to need to have good relationships with local authorities.
Absolutely.
And do we have any levers if they're finding that difficult to broker or coordinate?
Yes, the Local Government Association have been part of every single milestone event that certainly I've been at, and I think it would be fair to say that's true. And I've got to say their involvement has been absolutely marvellous in helping where it was necessary. And I've got to say there's plenty of places where the local authority involvement has been quite marked and markedly leading in some places, but they've been offering all the time to make sure that they'd have conversations with relevant local authorities that maybe weren't up to speed. But I have to say that in my knowledge that's probably the minority rather than the majority.
It's actually, I think, a distinguishing character of the stronger ones that have had such a really strong local authority input into the SDP process. So I'm just thinking off the top of my head, if I had to say which are the top 5 or 10 in terms of development, they've actually been really driven by the local authority in that area.
Good.
Sigurd.
From everything I've seen and heard from talking to people, I'm very encouraged by the process, but I'm very aware too that it's a long process and that we've only just started. And so it's just a small presentational point, I guess. In 19, we might want to avoid the risk of appearing too self-congratulatory in suggesting that by the end of this calendar year it'll all be over, and next year it's all about implementation. 'Cause I suspect this is a process that will need many a year still, to work through because of the import of what's happening. It's a terrific fact that we got this far, but there's much work to do yet.
So, and I think the board is supportive of this. If I go back a year to when the government asked us to form NHS improvement, I think it's important to recognise that what we were asked to do was to significantly improve the amount of collaboration across the health and care system between us. So in a way, the STPs are part of that.
Please excuse me, sorry, we can't hear anything that's being said.
I will.
Just wondering if people could speak up. I do
Okay,
apologise.
we will speak up. Thank you for
Thank you.
asking. So that collaboration is clearly evidenced within the STP processes. I've set sort of 5 broad tests for where we are, and they are around have we got the appropriate governance and engagement of all parts of the health and care system, and are we ensuring that we explain and understand this in public dialogue. Secondly, where is the ambition? Because if the ambition sits at either a sort of virtually no ambition or as at a extraordinary level of ambition, that may be at both ends of a pitch which we perhaps don't want to go quite in the short term. So we need to sort of assess the ambition. The third one, and this is sort of quite an important point really, do we absolutely have assurance about the execution of what is in these plans? Do we have confidence that they are deliverable? Fourthly, the resources, both the people resources and the financial resources, are they in line with the availability? And I think that bridges right into the 2-year planning exercise, because we have asked for the operational planning for 2 years to be aligned to the STPs. We're going to be making sure that everybody understands the broad envelope of their resources for the next 2 years. And lastly, I think it's just a practical thing, is what can be done quickly without delay to make progress on what we believe needs to be done on a greater sense of better better outcomes for patients and the public. So those are, in a way, Jim, I hope the benchmarks that are being used as we assess these STP plans and let them fly. And also, quite frankly, get out of the way of some of them, because some of them are fantastic in terms of what they do. Others, to Caroline's point, need quite a bit of help. And the answer is we have to give the right type of help rather than the wrong type of help in getting them free. Glynis, did you want to add?
I think, Chair, just taking 2 of the points that you just made, the first in terms of governance and engagement and what's been achieved in developing plans, and then the question of execution capacity, because how the plans get executed will depend on the sorts of structures that are in place to maintain those relationships across organisations, across providers, over time, and in a way that works really well with their current governance arrangements and with their current executive structures. And so one of the things that I think that we should be looking for is how the plans themselves expose to us the capacity within each of the footprints to deal with that particular problem. And I think that needs to be done earlier rather than facing the problem further down the line.
Thank you. I entirely agree. I think it's partly why I ordered those 5 tests in that way, because I think if you haven't got that high level of governance, engagement and structure in place and the ambition right, you probably don't pass to the 3rd or 4th tests in a way. So good. So I mean, it's a report on progress. We should be realistic. These are not easy things to do, but we are making progress, and it's a regular matter of discussion between the chairs of the arm's length bodies, the chief execs, the 5-year forward view team, and our regional directors. And it's tremendous to hear that the Local Government Association are engaging very strongly in the integration of the health and the care agendas, which is so important. Thank you for that, Bob.